Yes, guys, welcome back to the Natural Muscle Podcast. We are with our hosts, as always, Luke and Finn. We are joined today by Abi. I'm sure plenty of you listeners and watchers will have seen from her first novice season, rounding off with a second at Worlds, narrowly missing out on the pro card. But yeah, phenomenal season. So we just want to kind of like dive into that, dive into your bodybuilding process a little bit more, kind of what got you into the sport. So yeah, to kick things off, what got you into bodybuilding, as so to speak, really, Abby?
Yeah, so hi, first of all, thanks for having me on. Um, it kind of wasn't really ever in the plan to start with. So I've always generally been quite an active person. Like I've always generally been an athlete of some sort. I was a gymnast for about 11 years, danced for 4 or 5 years. I played rugby for 8, 9 years or something. And I rode horses competitively as well. So I kind of had a lot of I was very used to the discipline of training and stuff. And I ended up snapping all the ligaments in my ankle and kind of had to retire from all of them, but the riding. And I kind of just fell out of training properly, and then I just came across Nathan, my coach now, on social media, and we sort of had a few mutual connections anyway, and we just kind of got chatting, and I started coaching with him in June of 2022. And we just literally, like, again, competing wasn't on the cards. It was just more a case of trying to get me back to a bit more sort of good levels of fitness, sorting my diet back out and stuff. Because having finished rugby and dance and stuff, I kind of never really got back into, I kind of fell out of it. So, yeah, we kind of just started sorting my shit out really. And I went from someone who drank quite regularly, to, second in the world to a couple of months ago. So, I mean, yeah, like we just started training, and I kind of fell back in love with training properly and hard, and eating to put mass on and then stripping it off. And we did my first prep um, in 2023 for photo shoots. And that was fine. I think looking back on it, obviously it was a photo shoot prep, so it wasn't half as hard as competition prep, but it was my first go at a prep. And then we prepped for a mini photo shoot in November of 23, and we were like, oh, let's just get a posing lesson, let's just see. Because Nathan had kind of seen, I think, the potential in me, and then went, right, okay, do you want to compete? And I was like, well, I didn't ever say no. It just wasn't really something I'd ever thought of. And then we had a posing lesson, and my posing coach, Phoebe, from Elite Posing Academy, she's done me absolute wonders this season. Like, I can't thank her enough. But, she was like, nah, I think, because the original plan was, right, get a posing lesson, then maybe compete 2025. And she's like, nah, I think you're ready now. Like, start prep in January. So we did a quick, like, really big, trying to put on a bit of mass over Christmas, which didn't go quite as planned because I got quite ill and lost a ton of water weight. And I was sat quite light to start with. And then we kind of managed to build it back up and then start prep end of January. So um, that sort of Christmas period didn't quite go as planned. But yeah, I mean, it went all right, and we're now here. So yeah, no, it was a bit of a whirlwind. We didn't quite plan on starting in January, but it's yeah, that's kind of where we're at now, really.
Yeah, awesome. I think it's really interesting to hear that you was kind of like going into it for the lifestyle benefits and didn't really.
Yeah, yeah,
Also very, very nice to hear you didn't really kind of almost plan to kind of step into like delve into bodybuilding, but someone else kind of saw the potential in you and you was like, oh yeah, I'm enjoying the process,
yeah, massively.
start training, feel better from the lifestyle changes that you've made. Why not give it a go? Because that's kind of like almost
Yeah,
where
exactly.
I've come from. And many of us who've, particularly like some novice kind of athletes as well, who've probably trained for years and they've just not actually stepped on stage yet. Whereas they've been nailing the basics beforehand, and it's like clear to see that you have with the muscularity that you have, and then you stepped on stage and you're like, oh, I'm half decent at this. Maybe I'll continue
Yeah.
with this.
Yeah. And I think it helped having that base muscle just from being an athlete previously in multiple different sports, you know. So that definitely helps as well.
Yeah. And what sporting background was that in within as an athlete before within like athletics? What did that consist of? I know you said like multiple sports, but what what sporting field what was there particular?
So, I mean, my main sport has always been horse riding. I rode from a very young age and sort of got to championships and stuff in 2016, 2017, maybe. And we sort of represented a club, and then you go from club level and you represent the region, then you go national, and then you go to championships. And that was always kind of, you know, with horses, the my horse was not easy. He needed ridden 6 days a week minimum to keep him going. He wasn't something that you could pull out the field 2 days a week and crack on with. He was very difficult, but you know, that I think taught me a lot of like just even when it's sideways driving sleet, you've got to get out and just exercise them at least. And you know, I think that sort of I think from a young age sort of instilled quite a lot of like just discipline, just suck it up and get on with it. So that was probably the main sport. And then rugby I always loved. Like if I could go back to one sport, it would be rugby. But I my the injury kind of just wrote that off completely. And I now couldn't afford the risk of injury. Like if we're going to compete next year, I can't afford that risk. And then I'd say dance contemporary. I loved that, but it was just sort of it was something I did in high school, and then you kind of get out of that sort of group, and it's quite difficult to get back into it. And then gymnastics, I again did from a very young age. I kind of never really took it seriously for the first like 6 or 7 years, and then there was one session where we were just warming up, and I was like, "Whoa, I want to take it seriously." I don't know what happened, but then I competed with the squad for 2 or 3 years, I think. Um, so yeah, that was kind of the levels that I took then. But I mean, yeah, riding was definitely the main one.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of like, especially from rugby, I know you say it and I can like hear it on your voice, like the enjoyment you had from that. And we
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
often within bodybuilding, particularly natural bodybuilding, we get a lot of athletes come from that background, and it tends to be from picking up an injury and then moving over to bodybuilding. And then it's like, oh,
yeah,
I can't go back to that because of the risk of an injury. But they all generally seem to do very, very well because of like the sporting background, the discipline, especially from obviously with the horse riding, from being on with that like 6 days a week and kind of like not missing within that. I mean, the same with gymnastics, like a lot of crossover,
yeah.
particularly more within like opposing side of things as well, with these athletes as well.
Yeah,
So
I've found massively like my dance and gymnastics background has really helped with the posing and like just being comfortable on stage. Like, because once a lot of my feedback was like my stage presence is quite loud. And I've always kind of been confident on stage anyway. And from dance and gymnastics, you know, doing that on stage, I think that's really helped me.
yeah, it's good, definitely a good crossover and cross transfer of skills as well, which kind of especially helps you stand out from other competitors as well. And then if we talk through like your season as a whole and like starting things off, and particularly now with obviously the growing popularity of things on social media and expectations as you're going through this season, what was your like initial expectations like going into your first year? I know it was like stepping into a new sport, but you've obviously experienced other sports beforehand, and I'd imagine you'd want to do well at them from kind of your previous kind of background, really. So,
Yeah, I mean, in terms of my expectations, I was always gonna do 2 or 3 shows. We were always aiming for PCA first timers. And then there was then something like 3 weeks later, there was the PCA Naturals announced, and we sort of went, oh, let's just get on for the Naturals as well. So we kind of already planned 2 shows, and then my expectations were, right, PCA first timers, it's a first timer show. Let's just go get the nerves on. If I fuck up on stage, like just let's go and get it done, get that first stage under my belt. And then because to me the PCA Naturals meant a bit more because it was it's a fully natural show. And you can't ever, unless you do a natural show, there's no, if you compete with PCA, there's no proving that you're natural or not unless it's in the natural show. So like I think my expectation for that first one was just like I expect to just go through the motions, feel the nerves. If we place in top 5, we place in top 5. Like, but I was just kind of there to be like, you know what? Let's just get it done. Let's kind of see how we go through. And then I had 3 weeks to pull back or push forward, or we were like, right, let's see how that refeed goes. Let's feed more, feed less, whatever. So that was kind of the PTA first timers, as much as it was my first time show, and it was probably one of my most fun shows, I think, because being your first time. It wasn't like the priority show. It was a bit of a like test run for the natural. And so my expectations were not particularly high. I deliberately kind of didn't set any expectations because I know I put a lot of pressure on myself to be, and I am quite like that. I can tell myself, right, you need to come top 3, and then I put a lot of pressure on it. So I was just like, do you know what? I'm gonna, whatever happens, happens. If my heel strap breaks, my heel strap breaks. We're not gonna have a meltdown about anything. Obviously my heels didn't break, but that was just one of the scenarios I had in my head. And it just, I think also coming in with less pressure on myself helped, even just that look on the morning, just to relax. Because I was a little bit stressed that morning of, we were holding a bit of water like the night before. I remember the night before I had this dream that I just got on stage and like or missed my slot or something. I can't quite remember. So I woke up and I was still a little bit stressy, but then we kind of got there and I chilled out and it was absolutely fine. But that expectation for that first show wasn't huge. It was just get in and let it happen and see where we go.
Yeah. That's a great way to kind of approach your first show, really. But I'm sure like what you've mentioned there is something many of us will still kind of go through our heads, whether you've competed, like whether it's your first time or a number of times, like, oh, am I going to fuck this up? Am I going to do this? Like, and just stressing over the little variables rather than just kind of like chilling out and being within the moment. But obviously after winning the overall within the first show, the first of many, how did you kind of manage the expectations going forward, like throughout your season from there? Because you've set the bar
I
high.
mean,
It's
yeah,
yeah,
I did. I think I was a little bit, I kind of, for a long time, I don't know if people do, I don't know if it was just me, but I kind of went, right, that show's done, get it over, forget about it. And like, I don't quite know, I'd never really let this, oh my God, I've got a sword, I've got a gold medal, and I've got like the participation medal. And, I never kind of let that sunk in until I'd kind of finished my whole season. So
yeah,
it was kind of a hectic, like, so I knew that I then had UK DFBA the week after, and we jumped on this very last minute. And the posing was different. It was posing I hadn't done before because I'd only ever done PCA posing, because the plan was do PCA first timers, then PCA natties, and leave it at that. So I'd never done PCA, any other like federation of posing. So like the side pose was different, and I practiced it. And to start with, I hated that side pose for me. I don't know why. I think I was also getting in my head a bit like, oh fuck, this is all last minute, and I'm not very good at change. I like a plan. Anybody that knows me, anyone that's listening will like. I can't. I remember sort of 3 months into prep, Nathan gave me an off-plan meal after my check-in. Because it was my partner's birthday, and he was like, right, just go and have an off-plan. And I had a complete meltdown. Like for about 3 hours, I lost my head. I was like, I didn't plan for an off plan. I've got my Tupperware with me. I don't know what I'm doing. So that slightly last minute show did throw a bit of a curveball, but I'm really glad we did it. Obviously, we got to Worlds from it, but so the expectation I just dropped it all and just kind of restarted. So I was like, right, I've never done this posing before. I've never done a T-walk before. So poor Phoebe got like 100 million messages like the week before being like, what am I doing? And she, helped me massively. But so I think I just dropped the expectations kind of after every show. And I don't know if that's really, I don't know, it kind of just worked for me. It was a bit of I think looking back on it, I'd have liked to maybe sort of absorbed what had happened a bit more. But I think I was so focused on just the next show, next show, next show. I kind of dropped what had happened in the previous show. And I think looking back on it, I kind of maybe wanted to take that in a little bit more. But yeah, I mean, and then from the UK DFPA, we had like 2 weeks between first timers, and then I did a Fit X the day after the first time. The naturals. I did that Fit X the day after naturals, which again was going from PCA posing to Fit X posing, which is different again. And then obviously we went to Worlds the week after. So it ended up being 5 weeks, I think, between my first show and my last show. And it was only ever meant to be like 3 weeks. Which again, like I hadn't planned for. It was a bit like sort of me not having planned. Nathan just about lost it with me every day leading up to the Worlds because I was trying to plan it. And but it was good fun. But yeah, I mean, in terms of expectations between shows, I think I kind of dropped them and let every show start at a new slate. Because you could be the best person there for 4 shows in a row and some monster turns up next year. Like I don't think you can really put expectations on it because you don't know who's going to show up on the day. Like, I don't think you can, unless you get an athlete list released first and you stalk them on Instagram, which I was told never to do, like never look at your competition beforehand. I think you can't really put any expectations on anything.
No, not really. And particularly, I know you did the kind of earlier shows in the season anyway, not towards the back end, which didn't necessarily have qualifiers, so you don't know who's going to be there at all because you don't know who's kind of qualified for that, which may have
Yeah.
But yeah, with a growing rise in like popularity on social media, it's very easy to kind of see who's at this show, who's at that show, and so on there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's good to not get caught in the process because everyone looks different on social media as well. When you're up on the it's completely different, isn't it? But yeah, touching Throne Worlds, I know Finn, you wanted to kind of like dive into that process because I know it's something we've both aspired to get to. So I'll let you dive into that a bit more, mate.
Yes, I mean, sorry, Finn, go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's it's a long-term goal for most of us, isn't it, to do Worlds, and for you to do it your first time of asking is a pretty big achievement. So, in terms of, I know, like you were saying, you're a bit like overwhelmed with like the planning because you'd plan to end your season, and you get told, okay, you've got this thing in 2 weeks, and it might be the only opportunity you ever get, and it can kind of frazzle you a little bit. So. But obviously now you've had time to kind of soak it all in and everything like that. What was kind of your view of the show, how it ran, and your first experience with international athletes and all the things that come with the World Championships?
I mean, so because I was at the arse end of prep, I found everything sort of generally my patience was limited. And I think honestly, like the sort of the booking process wasn't the easiest, but I think that's because I was on the arse end of prep and I just kind of everything would overwhelm me at that point. And so I think in hindsight, I'd try and get somebody else. I'm not very good at handing the reins over. Like I like to plan it, I like to book it. I booked everyone's flights, I paid for everything, they just reimbursed me. Like, and I think in hindsight, I could probably hand that over to someone, or at least I know now that okay, it's gonna be a little bit stressful. Let's plan for the stress, and I can kind of manage that a bit more. Because over that week of planning it and booking stuff, and we had to book flights, and there's deadlines on getting into classes and stuff. all my check-ins were a little bit watery, and we were just holding a little bit. And so, you know, Nathan was like, right, you really need to start managing this stress. And it worked out absolutely fine. You know, we were a little bit watery the day before, but that was kind of expected with flying and stuff. And then I woke up the morning of with one of my sharper looks anyway. So I think, you know, it was, and I had an amazing team out there. Like my partner Harry was there, my mum was there, and Nathan was there. And I couldn't have done it without like all of them just played a little bit of like, mum was sort of a little bit of home, a little bit of comfort. She's not crazy, like she doesn't know loads about the bodybuilding industry. So like to get mum there and sort of let her learn about it as well, I think really was like quite a nice thing for me, because I could show mum, okay, this is what I've been doing for the last 6 months. Now you get it. And then Harry was there just, I mean, he's been all throughout my prep, like my absolute rock in terms of like just support. And I wasn't probably the nicest on prep, and I know that as a partner it can be more difficult than the person that's on prep, because you know he was supporting me and getting frankly fuck all back, and I know that you know that was quite hard for him, and he was just amazing. And then obviously Nathan just absolutely being like my number one fan and sort of cheering me on, and just he pointed me in the right direction, like every step of the way. And I just, you know, without them three people, I think this would have been a much different prep. And it was so nice to have them, because not everybody could get to every show. Like obviously Nathan came to all of them, but between sort of mum and Harry, they kind of split between different shows and stuff. So like it was really nice to that final like blowout of the season have everybody there. And it was just really nice to also kind of be in a different country with them all, and kind of just it was quite a different dynamic to what, because I'd never had all of them all in the same room at the same time. So it was really nice, and it was such a fun experience. And all that, so we went out as like Team UK with UK DFBA, and we had team kit and hoodies and t-shirts, and it was so much fun, and the whole team were like really really good. Everybody was kind of there supporting everybody. We were there very much as a team, which I quite liked, rather than like, and when you're backstage you are there, like, you know, I was there with Nathan, I wasn't necessarily with the rest of the team. It was me and Nathan backstage, and we were sorting ourselves out. But like in between bits, you know, everybody generally, unless you're backstage, was watching you on stage, or you know, and I think yeah, it was mint. And the actual show, the organization of the show, like when we were there, it was very easy. The because we sort of had a little sort of village thing, that sort of we all stayed in. It was quite nice to all be in the same place. And yeah, it was amazing experience. And like obviously I'd never done anything with international athletes before in any of my sports. So like being on stage with those girls was just amazing. Everybody was kind of, you know, geeing each other up, and like it wasn't necessarily, because you know how sometimes you can be backstage and you're kind of eyeing people up, and you're nice, but like you're not maybe making friends. Like, you know, you're 10 minutes from being on stage, you're at the arse end of prep, you feel kind of like shit. You're not necessarily in the best position to start making friends with people, admittedly. And you know, it was just really really nice backstage as well. It's like we all just kind of were like, shit girls, we're here, like whatever happens now happens. There's, you know, let's just absolutely go out and have a ball. And it was just so much fun. Yeah.
I have to laugh, like the comment about your mother. I think like most bodybuilders, like I think have the same story with the mum. Like they don't understand what you're doing, they support and love you, and they'll come to your show and they have no idea, right, why is my daughter up there in a sparkly bikini and some fake tan? But you know what, she's happy and she's been working hard. And it's the same with my mum. She had no idea when I started. Like she just saw that I was getting skinnier, and she was a bit like, "Oh, you look a bit ill. Like, are you sure this is healthy?" And I'm like, well, no, but
it's not really healthy, but
no, it's not at all. But then when they come on the show, they, like you said, they go, "Oh, now it makes sense. Like this is what it's all for." So I think every one of us whose mother's still in the picture, like, I think that's definitely the story we've all had.
Yeah.
So yeah, they don't understand, but they'll absolutely support you through it. And I also want to touch on what you just said about the backstage camaraderie, because I think, not to kind of pick one over the other, but I do think in the natural scene, like, backstage vibes are a little bit better in my experience. Like,
Yes.
I've noticed that some assisted shows, like, sometimes people, like, the egos can be a bit there, because maybe the stakes are quote unquote higher, because there might be pro cards which kind of, like, especially in the IFBB, like, there's a lot of money. There can be a bit of like that itchiness and that kind of clicks, and people looking at each other and like, oh, no one talking, and it's all sullen. Whereas at natty shows, everyone's just like, look, we're just here because we enjoy it. Like, we're not getting paid 10 grand to be here. Like, we've lost money doing this, so let's just have a bit of fun.
Yeah, God, my season cost me a lot.
Yeah. Well, this is it, and you know what? To get that kind of exposure of going to another country, like you said, you did all those sports growing up, and you never got to compete abroad, and now you're getting to compete abroad in this bizarre sport that we all do. I think it's such a cool thing, and that's why I really want to get on a Team UK at some point, because my old coach Damien Lees, he always spoke really highly about Team UK, like if it was at WNBF Worlds in previous years, or the Natty Olympia or PNBA Worlds as it is now. Like, Team UK was just something to be a part of. Like, everyone supports each other, like, you make friends for life, everyone stays in touch, and it's just like a really, really good atmosphere, and it's something that I certainly would love to be on at some point. So in terms of like your experience within the PCA, the PNBA, and the UK FBA, would you say in terms of there was a favourite? Oh, I'm FitX, sorry. Would you say there was like a favourite show day experience in terms of like the actual stage production and everything like that?
Oh, they were all very different. So the PCAs, I think my initial response would be PCA was my favorite, because you get to do a dance routine. And for me, like, I hadn't danced in years, and I was so excited to get 60 seconds of dance to some good music that I connect with. And like, my routine, I loved it. And Phoebe did such a good job of like choreographing it with me. And like, I think so PCA was probably my favorite on stage experience, because I got to do that dance routine, and kind of dug back into like my life as a dancer, and I loved it. I think UK DFBA, so because it was kind of a last minute show, I literally I was very chilled about it. I was like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I was most chilled going to UK DFBA, and I think that was probably one of my better looks. Obviously with no stress, and I literally napped there's a photo of me in a blanket and a cushion napping against the wall. It, like, I wasn't backstage. I found backstage a little bit crowded. I'm not very good in big crowded spaces, so like, I literally napped next to Nathan on the chair. He was sat down. I was like in the little corridor bit. We were just watching like who was on stage and stuff, and I literally fell asleep for about an hour. And so that was kind of quite a chilled experience, and there was a little bit of pressure, I think, because I was like, I will admit, I was kind of like, not what if I don't win, but what if I win, then we get to Worlds, I'm gonna have to make that decision. And I think that put a little bit of worry on me, in terms of like, what if I win, and then you got to get to Worlds, and I sort of, again, I hadn't really planned for World, so I was a bit like, oh, what if? And then obviously we won, and I got that amazing belt from the MVW, and I use it like every leg day, isn't it? And I kind of like, it took me to get home, and I kind of needed to get home and decompress, and because I still wasn't very sure. I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. I kind of like, my season's already planned, like, and then I was like, oh, do you know what? It's only like an extra 8 days or something. Like, what am I questioning? Like, just get on and do it. And it took me sort of to drive home on my own, to kind of go have a word with myself and be like, what are you doing? Like, shut up, get on with it. It's 8 days. And it's the Worlds. Like, so, and then I kind of text Nathan, I was like, right, let's fucking go to Worlds. By the time I got home. So that was kind of a whole different experience again, because it was like the qualifier for Worlds. And then PCA Natties was similar to PCA first timers, naturally. And again, I just loved it with the dance. And then the FitX again was entirely different. just because it was similar posing to UK DFBA, but again, like it was a fed that I didn't really follow particularly, because I'd only ever planned to do PCA, so I never really looked into many other federations. I kind of was tunnel visioned into PCA and get this right, and so again, it was just entirely different. And so yeah, I mean, I would say as an initial response, PCA was probably the most fun because I got to do the routine.
Yeah, it makes sense because, like you say, it's a shame that the UK FBA doesn't do figure like routines. We do the I walk or the T walk, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, it's that time to express yourself and also get your individual photos. But I suppose with a dancing background, it makes sense that you did enjoy that time on stage. And shout out to Phoebe. I've known Phoebe years. I used to work in the same gym she does, or she did. Sorry. And she's brilliant at what she does. So yeah, it's great that you had someone like her in your corner, and she's a top person in the industry, always very supportive. So yeah, if you can make it to one of her posing sessions in the area, guys, I certainly would recommend it.
Yeah, definitely.
She's top notch. So in terms of like now you've kind of had such success in like the first like go at everything competing wise, like does that give you more motivation to continue, or could it actually be like a bit one of those, well, I've kind of completed it now, like, because I know some people can have such success and then it's like, I've done it, like, so how do you personally find that motivation now in this, like, okay, what's competition prep 2.0 look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not going the way of like, no, I've completed it, because I really don't think I have. So I mean, currently I'm just doing a little bit of a mini cut. So my reverse didn't quite go as we planned. I had a bit of a niggling trap injury for my last couple of shows. And I went to speak to my physio, and he kind of gave me a poke, and he's like, nah, mate, you're done. Like, you need to stop. Like, go to Worlds, but then you need to stop. And we kind of, so I had a bit of an injury, and Nathan was like, right, you come back from Worlds, you take a full week off, rest it. Like, because I didn't want to start niggling an injury when your body's in such a responsive state. So we took a week off, and then I trained really hard for 2 days. I did a big push session, a big leg session. And then I woke up the day after the leg session feeling kind of groggy. I thought, maybe just like, because I'd basically got through my entire prep without being ill. I think I had a slight head cold for 2 days, and that was it. And the day after, I could not get out of bed. And I was bedbound for about 10 days. And I've not been that ill for a very long time. And I think that was a mixture of like everything had stopped, like my body had stopped, like my brain had stopped, everything had just kind of like gone, okay, like we can chill. And the illness just hit me like a train. So again, like it took a full 2 weeks off training. Like I was eating where I could, but I wasn't particularly hungry. My relationship with food post sort of thing was a little bit wobbly. I just kind of got a bit nervous of seeing the weight put back on. I know it can kind of go one or two ways. Either you binge or you get nervous about it. And I did for the first sort of week really worry around food a little bit. And then we kind of got it back to like sort of just getting into healthy eating habits again, and I was absolutely fine. And I think in hindsight, that illness kind of was a bit of a blessing because it meant I had to stop, and I just had to, I was like, right, I'm ill, I need to get these meals in, and it kind of just like push the sort of reset button. And so it didn't, anyway, my reverse didn't quite go as planned because we were injured, then ill, and then I went, and then it was my graduation, so I had like sort of a 3 or 4 days completely off plan for my graduation, celebrating and stuff. And then like 2 days after my grad, we were on a family holiday, and it just kind of, I put on more weight than I should have done really. But I think being first prep again, that's sort of expected as well. So we're just currently in a bit of a mini cut phase, just reduce that body fat back down, and then we're going to do a big push right through to next year and kind of see where we're going to go. I mean, with my work schedule, we're looking at competing back end season of next year. So probably start the prep in like May, June time. and then compete back end of the season, mainly because so I work in international conferencing, and the conference season kind of dies off in June through to September. So because being on prep, so we do international conferences and we go abroad for a week and run a big conference. Naturally, at a conference, there's a lot of pastry, there's a lot of wine, there's a lot of expectation to kind of mingle and network and that. So I don't really drink now much at all. So Harry and I didn't drink at all whilst I was in prep, obviously, and then we've kind of come out of it and gone like, we hate this. I tried some red wine like the night after Worlds, and we I think drank about a quarter of a glass. And we were like, no, I don't think this is for us anymore. So I'm sort of now really out of that culture within conferences. So I think the easiest way to do it is put the prep during when the least conferences are going to be, and then compete in most of the natural federations next year and see if we can get a natural pro card potentially. Well, I mean, it depends kind of how work goes really, because having just finished my final year at uni, I'm going back to, I've worked there previously on my placement year, but it'll be probably a bit different this time round. So we got to kind of see how work goes. But in theory, prep will start sort of May, June-ish next year, and then compete back end of the season and see kind of where we go from there.
Oh, nice. And obviously coming off the last year, it was the first time you took a second place. Did that almost add more fuel to the fire to kind of come back and think, right,
yeah, I think
close? Or
yeah, I'm kind of like looking back on it. I mean, I was absolutely just elated to even be in top 5 at the Worlds. Like I again walked in with zero expectations. I had no idea who I was competing against. I deliberately didn't look at, because we got an athlete list like 2 weeks before. I deliberately didn't look at anybody on. I sort of looked out for names I recognised, but I didn't really recognise anyone. I went in again with zero expectations, and there was massive imposter syndrome looking back at it. I was like, shit, do I deserve to be here? Because I was like, this is my first season. I've done 4 shows. I'm now at the World Championships. Like, am I kind of meant to be here? Like, so there was a little bit of that. And I think, so I just went in with no expectations. I was like, hell, I'm at the Worlds. Like, I'm just going to have a good time. And I think I'm quite glad that I came second, and just it really sort of, as you say, like just being picked. The girl that beat me absolutely had me on legs. Like that was always going to be where I was sort of slightly weaker. And she just absolutely had me on legs, and she completely deserved the win. And I didn't realise, but she's normally a bikini competitor. So she was going to compete in bikini and then swap to figure. But I think I'm kind of glad that I came second, because it just like put that bit more of like, right, let's like absolutely push for it next year. And it was just, I mean, yeah, as I said, I didn't really think I'd even get top 5 when I was backstage. So again, like you don't really know what they're looking for, and especially at an international event, I had no idea. Sort of at PCA, I'm now sort of figuring out, okay, I think I'm probably the sort of figure like my ex taper. That's kind of what the PCA are looking for. But I had no idea what like international lot I'm looking for. So I just kind of went along with it, and the result would be what it would be. But I mean, I was just buzzing with even second. So
yeah, it's kind of almost like see where you fall. But I think there's not much more fuel added than coming second place, really. Probably more so than actually coming like towards like the back end, really, because you're so close.
Because you're first to lose, aren't you?
So far away. Yeah, you're almost like the first loser. I've had a couple of second places. Never nice, really, either. Never nice. And yeah, it's great to hear that you'll be back on stage. Hopefully next year, the back end of next year. Knocking on the door for a pro card. I'm sure you'll be up there and in the mix of that. And yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on. Obviously, speaking about your journey. Apologies, it's a shorter one from there. I know we've clashed a lot with timings, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners will take inspiration from listening to this, as they have done throughout the season. And yeah, it's great for us to actually hear your backstory and the fact that you're sticking to it and it's not a one season wonder anyway.
Yeah, no, and like I think, yeah, I'm definitely kind of looking forward to going through to next year. And like now that I've started a bit of coaching as well, like I hope that that can kind of help me like learn, because I've learned so much over prep about myself. Like you think you know your body, you don't until you prep, and then you really know your body. And like I've learned a lot about myself and like about sort of how far I can push my body and sort of the signals that my body gives me to tell me that it's done. Um, and I really hope that now I'm coaching, I can kind of start bringing some of that experience in. And I'm not just like coaching prep athletes either, like sort of lifestyle, fitness, photo shoot, whatever. But I think I really want to try and start bringing that experience into that as well, where I can.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure you will. And there's no better way to almost like lead from the front towards your clients as well. Not in terms of like expectations and that, but just almost being a role model and learning from your own
Yeah, massively. Yeah.
through multiple phases as well, from the highs, the lows, and so on, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I say, it's been a pleasure having you on and speaking to you.
Thank you very much.
We'll mention your like I say, we'll put your handle in the bio for those
Yeah.
interested in coaching from lifestyle up towards competitive. I'm sure you look at doing that within the future, gaining experience as well. But yeah. Pleasure having you on, and yeah, appreciate everyone for listening, and we will catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.